The latest on the Russia probe, former FBI Director James Comey could testify as early as next week. Is that the smoking gun investigators have been waiting for? Well, we'll ask our panel of attorneys that question. Also, the ex-drama teacher at Horace Greeley High School in Chappaqua is not getting any jail time, even though he admitted to sexually abusing students. We'll debate with the panel as to why. Then, is it legal for your employer to charge you thousands of dollars more for health insurance if you refuse to take a DNA test? Well, we're going to tell you why that soon could become a law near you. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French, our legal panel standing by. But we begin tonight with politics and more breaking news as it seemingly comes down every day nowadays, every day in the afternoon. Word of a major move by the Trump administration, that to withdraw the U.S. from the Paris Climate Accord struck by President Obama. And for more, I want to bring in our senior political correspondent, Andrew Whitman. And there was rumors of this, but a lot of people thought it was really more of a campaign threat than really a promise you deliver on. Looks different today. And
also because there was an internal division within the Trump world about whether to stay with the Paris Accord.
Even the Trump family.
We'll get to that in just a moment, Rich. But if the U.S. does withdraw from the Paris Climate Accord, and there's been no official announcement by the White House yet, just reporting that Trump is determined to exit that deal, it would put the U.S. at odds with more than 190 nations that have signed on to the deal. The only nations that haven't, Syria and Nicaragua. The Paris deal is a set of guidelines for nations to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, helping nations, especially low-lying ones, to deal with the impacts of climate change and slowing the rise of global temperatures. Nations under the pact set their own targets for reducing emissions. The deal makes it easier to monitor how nations are progressing towards those goals. The decision to pull out may hinge on President Trump's view of climate change. In the past, Trump had indicated he both believes and does not believe that man is impacting climate change. But he's called climate change a hoax ever since he became a candidate. His core supporters both challenge the validity of climate change and fear that reducing emissions would harm the nation's economy and some energy producers, especially in the coal industry. Word of Trump's decision being blasted by groups that you might expect: Democrats, environmentalists, and more, and apparently most of the European continent. The president of the European Union Commission blasting Trump after the news broke, saying, quote, "That's not how it works. The Americans can't just leave the climate protection agreement." Mr. Trump believes that because he doesn't get close enough to the dossiers to fully understand them. Trump's decision far from a unanimous one among his close staff and aides and other groups that you expect to have sway with the president. First on that list, first daughter Ivanka Trump. She was reportedly lobbying her father to stay with the Paris deal, apparently to no avail. Also in the group wanting to stay in the deal, two of Trump's cabinet members, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Energy Secretary Rick Perry. Three Republican senators have gone public saying we should stay in the deal: Susan Collins and Lindsey Graham, and also Bob Corker, typically a reliable conservative voice and vote. In addition, at least 13 Republican members of Congress have said they publicly support the Paris deal as well. Even 2012 presidential nominee Mitt Romney came out against the decision to exit the Paris deal in a tweet today. This, though, might be the most surprising group of Paris supporters: some American corporate titans. Among them, ExxonMobil, Apple, Google, Walmart, DuPont, BP, and Shell Oil. All have signed a letter to President Trump saying the deal provides a usable, practical framework to help those companies deal with climate change. Also supportive of the deal, the United Nations. And also Pope Francis, who met with the president just last week. It was the first topic the pontiff brought up to Mr. Trump, who apparently was unconvinced. Now, most people, when they think about climate change, they think about stuff that's in the air or in the water, or perhaps they think of Arctic ice levels or global water levels. But climate change is also a major factor in international relations, and even when it comes to war and peace, which is why the official policy of the Defense Department is to recognize that climate change poses a threat. The department cannot take a position on the Paris Accord itself, but DoD recognizes that climate change does impact global security and stability, noting environmental needs like keeping sea levels low or ensuring supplies of clean drinking water could lead to the wars of tomorrow. That argument is buoyed by the reactions of both Germany and China, two economic powerhouses. Both nations and their leaders strongly support the Paris deal. With the U.S. pulling back, both are now positioned to take the lead on the deal's regulations and compliance aspect, and both stand poised to ride the wave of green technology and techniques that will be provided as the U.S. will likely slip back. And today, German Chancellor Angela Merkel met with the Chinese premier. One suspects that the topic of climate change and the Paris deal did come up. Rich?
there's so much to unpack here. And again, in a bizarre press conference today that wasn't even a video, just an audio feed of Spicer talking to reporters, he couldn't answer any questions as to whether the president believed in climate change, didn't believe in change, believed in the deal, supported the deal, wouldn't or wouldn't, although all the leaks have suggested that it's going to happen. The question is completely or in part. But when your own energy director, your own secretary of state, and your own daughter say don't do it, it also opens up, Andrew, who's really got the ear of the president? I know that's a question whose answer changes seemingly by the week, if not the day, but it doesn't make good business sense. It doesn't make good national security sense, and certainly doesn't make good diplomatic sense.
There's a couple of spheres of influence in the White House that seem to have gotten the president's ear on this one, and that would have been Scott Pruitt, who is the EPA director, and Steve Bannon, who both doesn't like the notion of a climate change deal and has questions about the validity of climate change. He also doesn't like the international compact aspect of the whole thing.
He's a nationalist.
The fact that the whole world came together on this one. But this was really more of a political move, assuming that he follows through with it, and this is a president who's notorious for changing his mind at the last minute, but assuming that he follows through, it's not a particularly good spot for the United States to be in, especially with those technologies that are going to be falling behind. It is good politically for the president, who has shown an affinity to go in decisions where his base might lead him, and his base certainly has been opposed to a lot of the climate.
We'll talk about this tomorrow, but droughts, extreme weather, directly connected here to global warming, climate change, and more unease in the world, bad for America. That's why when you have the Pope, Exxon, and China agreeing on something, and you're against it, and you're with Nicaragua and Syria as the only two holdouts, probably not a good look here. But this was not the only news of the day, was it?
No, the other major headline from D.C. today, James Comey is reportedly ready to testify about the Trump-Russia mess, and he will do so publicly. That testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee could happen as early as next week. And multiple reports say that Comey will testify that President Trump did pressure him to drop the FBI investigation into former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn, and that Comey is looking forward to the chance to tell his story. Comey has reportedly met with special counsel Robert Mueller to determine what topics Comey can address before the committee and which topics might interfere with possible criminal prosecutions. Trump fired the former FBI director on May 9th. And late this afternoon, word that the House Intelligence Committee issued subpoenas for Michael Flynn and Trump personal attorney Michael Cohen to both testify and produce documents. No word on when they will appear or what their deadline is for producing those documents, Rich.
And I'll talk to the attorneys about with concurrent investigations and how that could actually make more difficult for criminal investigations. But a lot of us thought, I did, that Mueller was going to say, stand down, Comey, right? Two particularly close. And in effect, Comey's going to have his day. By at least CNN's reporting and other people's too. Not only will he testify, he's looking forward to it. And what we've heard, Andrew, is that one document where he basically was told to back off by the administration and leave Flynn alone, and also to give a loyalty pledge and all the rest. There's at least 3 other documents that people have seen that are even more damning than that. It'll probably come down to who do you trust, because the president's already said both Comey and Clapper in his recent tweets have lied in effect. And not even in effect, literally, that they lied under oath, and that we should trust him. So will it be, do you trust Comey or do you trust the president? But either way, we're going to break out the popcorn next week because it's going to be must-see TV.
Oh, it's going to be fascinating. And the meeting with Mueller, and I'll be fascinated to hear what the attorneys have to say about this, but we may get an idea of what Mueller's focus is on the criminal aspect of all this by what topics that Comey is and isn't allowed to talk about. So if we start hearing about particular details and Comey demurs from being able to answer them, you'll have a pretty good idea. I think that Mueller is focusing on those kinds of areas in terms of criminal prosecution. One thing he might be willing to let go is conversation or testimony relating to possible obstruction of justice, because that just seems like, it would be the focus of the Comey testimony and those memos that say that Trump tried to pressure me, which would be an indication of obstruction of justice, and also because that plays to the political aspect of what Congress does in these investigations. The special counsel handles the criminal investigation. The political investigation basically happens in Congress, and if there's enough there that indicates something impeachable, that would be something for Congress to act on even before you get any criminal prosecution.
And what do we say every night here, Andrew? The biggest problems this president has are all of his own making. And if you think about it, the day that he so unceremoniously fired Comey, where he learned about it on TV when other people pointed to a monitor for him to turn around and find out he was fired. He took Comey off the leash, if you will, and now he wasn't part of an investigation. Now he can talk freely on Capitol Hill, and that's what we're going to get next week. Thank you, as always. All right, coming up next, we're going to bring in our legal panel, and we're going to dig deeper into the Russian probe. I'm going to ask them questions that can and can't be asked. Who should and should be doing the investigation? Do the tweeting and do the sound bites of our one Donald Trump here actually impact this investigation? A lot of characters involved. We'll get into that after this.